Edward Snowden is a coward, he is a traitor, and he has betrayed his country.
The man who leaks details of a secret telephone and internet surveillance program in the USA has disappeared in Hong Kong.
It's the greatest loss of secrets in our nation's history.
I want to get him caught and brought back for trial.
The border is open. We've got to go. Now's a chance. The border is open. Could close, at any time.
Everybody obviously takes very different things from any artistic production, and one of the themes that stuck with me was the theme of arrogance. That moment when you have this very interesting interplay between Edward and Mr. Hayden, when they talk about values, when they essentially address the same things, but have a totally different view on them. And I think they both accuse each other of arrogance. Was it something that you were aiming for, or did it emerge throughout the filming?
Well, the amazing interview with Michael Hayden, which Paul did, is really quite interesting because it's fascinating to see that both Edward Snowden and Michael Hayden both feel that they are true patriots and that they are both defending American values. And that there's actually kind of, Hayden believes that he's defending the Constitution and Edward Snowden believes that he's defending the Constitution. So you have this kind of conflict around the issue of a vision of what is the United States and what does it stand for. Mm-hmm. And that happened simply without it being planned, and it had to do with the amazing interview that Paul did.
I wonder if the reaction to the film in French, German, Dutch audience was any different from, let's say, the Russian audience, because obviously you react to something that you find most appealing to you, and I think the things that interest the Russian audience are perhaps different from people in other countries.
I mean, we showed it in France at a screening like this, and what was most astonishing for the French viewers or people in the audience was the fact that a simple telephone call from the United States can close down their airspace. I mean, that was where there was a very vivid silence in the room, and the people laugh at different places. They're different. That's kind of the interesting thing. Could I just add one thing about the archive? Mm-hmm. There's not only RT Archive, there is a bunch of other, the BBC and stuff like that. You have a wonderful, very well organized archive, but so do others, and that's in the film also.
One impression that I personally took from the documentary is that WikiLeaks was a semi-intelligence organization. I mean, the sophistication of logistics that Sarah Harrison had to go through to bring Snowden from Hong Kong to Moscow, I mean, it's really impressive. You must have had an insight at the Hong Kong airport to learn the status of the border, then this practice of booking more than 10 flights, again, this purposeful diversion. It looks like you guys have borrowed some of the tactics of the agencies whose work you have helped to shed some light on.
It's possible. I've been studying these agencies around the world, principally the United States, but other countries as well, for 20 years now. And so in order to defend our journalists and defend our sources and defend our servers and our financial infrastructure, we've had to understand these things. We did get very good sources in Hong Kong, and I wouldn't say that we were lucky because we worked really hard to get them, but those proved vital in understanding what the status of the border, what the feeling was in the Politburo within China, the feeling was in the Hong Kong legislature, what the feeling was for other sources in Moscow itself and the other countries that we would have had to have flown Edward Snowden through to get to a place of asylum in Latin America, which was his preferred option. Although my advice to him was that he would be safest in Moscow.
Without the participation of the Russian intelligence, without the participation of the Chinese intelligence, or at least some green light from both of those countries, Snowden's escape would have been impossible. Who do you think was taking advantage of whom? Was it the intelligence agencies?
There was no participation from any intelligence service. I mean, we say this loudly because we put in a lot of work and some risk and some money in order to pull this off. What Russia did was very important, however. It did the right thing. It didn't squeeze Edward Snowden. It acted in a formal manner. It protected him, which it has an obligation to do so under the 1951 Convention. Of course, countries often don't stand up for their obligations. In this case, Russia did, and it deserves credit for doing that and to not succumbing to very intense diplomatic pressure from the United States, which was displayed and which cowed numerous other countries.
I think, you know, what I learned more than anything else from this film is that the immense pressure that US is able to put on different countries. And I think, you know, what I really understood was that everyone more or less hated to have Snowden landing on their tarmac. And for the Danes to give Snowden asylum, I mean, I would say keep on dreaming. I think the film is, at least we try to present it as an honest effort to show one man, one person that has meant so much in the world debate, to show that one person being thrown into this very complicated political situation that the world is in today. So in that sense, you're right. It's an effort to try and explain what happens when you do that and which forces are brought in from WikiLeaks to the mainland China government, to all these different people, to the Danish, all the European countries that run and hide and stuff like that. So, yes.
It also represents an interesting opportunity. This is a very unusual and unique situation that, much like the situation with the pursuit of Edward Snowden by the United States and the collapse of Western Europe in standing up for the European Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, can be used to throw some light on what the practice is versus the rhetoric here in London. Unlike a formal prisoner, I am able to have visitors to make telephone calls when I want to make them. Yes, of course, they're monitored, but we can develop ways and have developed ways to avoid that monitoring in certain cases. And I find it quite unusual that I was able to coordinate Edward Snowden's asylum with myself being in this situation of having a thwarted asylum. Of course, I was very highly motivated, having been in this situation myself. I didn't want to see Edward Snowden go through it as well. But I think there must be some interesting lesson to learn about what individuals can do in relation to these very large, powerful and corrupt bureaucratic powers in the United States, if they have serious determination and are surrounded also by good people who are willing to assist them.
Would you trade places with Edward Snowden?
Right now, in a heartbeat, yes, certainly. Although Edward Snowden is in practice for the next few years, if he wants to take his security seriously, confined to Russia and maybe a few air routes in and out for particular events that have some political protection, say speaking at the UN, for example. While that's true for the next few years, and then in the sort of 30-year time span, he also has certain limitations. To be free in Russia and have some type of freedom of movement internationally is much preferable to any person, myself or Chelsea Manning or many others, who are kept effectively confined to one small space.